In the first half of the 20th century, discrimination against French speakers in Louisiana reached an all-time high. Through efforts to standardize the public education system, English was declared the standard language of schools in Louisiana. The curriculum would be taught in English, textbooks would be written in English, teachers and students would speak English, and other languages would not be spoken on school grounds.
Both my parents spoke French. My mother's from Cajun, Louisiana, which is a little town south of St. Martinville, and she spoke French. She was one of those kids that spoke French before English, and one of those kids in school that would be punished for speaking French. And she knew Cajun French.
Teachers often punished students who violated the rule, making them kneel or hitting them with objects from around the classroom. The state government mandated required education in 1916 and required English education in 1921. In the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s, co-opted members of the old Acadian elite who constituted a significant portion of the South Louisiana teaching faculties joined their Anglo colleagues in various attempts to stamp out the French language spoken by Cajuns. The linguistic campaign, which effectively criticized all things Cajun, gradually drove the culture to the brink of extinction, as Cajuns internalized the negative values associated with their culture by outsiders. Fearing additional scorn, many parents stopped teaching their children the language.
When my brother was old enough to go to school, who's the oldest in the family, he could not speak a word of English. He spoke strictly French. Teacher spoke English, so they had to send him home to learn English. So when my sister and I were born, my parents decided we needed to learn both languages. That is when the household became prominently English.
In 1968, responding to mounting political pressure, the state legislature established the Council for the Development of French in Louisiana to halt and then reverse the decline of the Cajun community's core cultural institutions. But through the reprimanding of an entire generation of Cajun French speakers, the population was cut down to a fraction of its original size. According to historian Shane Bernard, around 80% of the Louisiana populace spoke French at the turn of the 20th century, but by the 1980s, less than 5% of the population were native French speakers. Rather than being taught to the next generation, I found that the parents or adults that could speak French would use the language to keep the children from understanding what they were talking about. Oftentimes, life got in the way, and it was much easier to speak in English to their kids since it's what they learned in school. Kids were often too stubborn to learn the language because most of their friends spoke English.
My mother and our father would speak French. The kids could not understand what we were saying, so we felt safe with our little secrets. I think life just gets busy. You know, you're trying to be a mother, and I'm sure working like I was. And they had French in school, but at that time when he was taking French, when he first began the class, I did not realize that it was a different French than a Cajun French. You know.
So if you'd known that it wasn't Cajun French, would you have changed your mind and spoken to him more with the language? Okay.
Of course.
Okay. So are you disappointed that you didn't get to pass your language on to him?
Yes, because it's a great language,
Yeah.
and it comes from the roots. To me, it should be somewhere, at least a little bit, in everyday conversation with whoever you're with.
Okay.
I stopped speaking French at school because everybody was talking English, so you just go with the flow. So when you look at it that way, it is a dying language.
Yeah.
The circle's getting smaller and smaller.
What we've learned is that in just a couple of generations, Cajun French went from being the only language spoken in some communities to being a secondary language only used in informal settings, to finally being completely unknown by later generations. While it is known that there are less speakers now, just how few there are can be a surprise even to native speakers. The desire to help it return to prominence is there, but the knowledge on how to do such things is lacking. While Cajun French speakers feel sorrow for the loss of their language and regret for not helping to pass it on, it's no fault of their own. They were pressured into losing their culture through decisions made by government entities who did not have the foresight to see that they were destroying a part of culture that is integral to the identity of South Louisiana.
Et pour mon grand-père, le père de mon mère, il voulait aller à la maison de son frère. Ça fait, il a parti, il a marché. Mais son frère croyait que quelqu'un était là pour voler son poule. Ça fait, il a pris son pistolet, puis il a tiré. Et puis il a cogné mon grand-père dans le pas bête. Il a crié, il a crié. Ça fait, mon grand-père a eu juste un œil, parce que son frère a tué l'autre. C'est ça, il a dit. My grandfather wanted to go to his brother's, so he took off. Well, he walked. Back in them days, you walked. As he got to his brother's house, his brother thought somebody was there to steal his chickens. So he shot my grandfather in the eye. And my grandfather hollered and hollered and hollered. So my grandfather only had one eye. Supposedly a true story.